Presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, the incomparable Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain. It's a little colder than I'd like, but thus is life in November in New England. Before we get started here, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you're looking to sell your current home, move into your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, then you need to give Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, he has the knowledge and the know-how to help guide you through this process. Again, if you're looking for an experienced loan officer that understands how the process works and can navigate you through all the trickery or the tricky parts of the process, then Herb is your guy, 781-254-2846. Or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, Stone. Now, right out of the gate, we have a comment, and it's our good buddy, old man Willem joins us. We winning, and indeed the Patriots are winning. They improved to 7-2 yesterday with a 24-23 win over the Atlanta Falcons. Patriots hit the road this week to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what we can now say is probably going to be that litmus test game that we've been looking for. With the win yesterday, the Patriots have now won 6 in a row. They continue to stay in first place in the AFC East. They also have a top 3 seed in the AFC. They're currently the number 3 seed in the AFC. And we talked about this yesterday on the Patriots Pulse post-game show, so we don't need to rehash the game necessarily. Couple of interesting tidbits, though, that came from the game. One, this clapping thing. I think a lot has been made of it. I know that Mike Vrabel addressed it today. You were up there. Just some thoughts on what he had to say. The Atlanta Falcons, of course, Raheem Morris, their head coach, comes out yesterday after the game in his post-game press conference and basically accuses the Patriots of mimicking the cadence, which is what ultimately forced Michael Penix into an intentional grounding penalty. I don't buy that. I think it's a load of bull. Milton Williams addressed it after the game yesterday, basically saying, I'm too busy looking at the ball and trying to time the snap. I don't have time to be clapping or doing any of that other shit. And those were his exact words, by the way. But how did Vrabel speak to it today? What were his thoughts when he was asked by Karen Guregian about this whole situation with the Patriots supposedly mimicking signaling?
Exactly how you'd expect him to respond. A little wise ass-ish, but he kind of just, brushed it off. And I'll ask you, I think it's nothing, but can a center hear someone clapping 15 yards away when the stadium is that loud? Probably
No,
not, right?
no.
Right.
When we're talking about mimicking a cadence, it's got to be somebody in the front 7. It's got to be a defensive lineman, to be honest with you. I know that I think they were saying that it was Jalen Hawkins. No chance. No chance. And look, Hawkins, and I've watched him clap during the course of games. He does it all the time. He's doing it to get his teammates' attention so that they can make an adjustment. He's not doing it to mimic the quarterback's cadence or to throw off the snap. Absolutely not. Look, if I'm Raheem Morris, I'm pissed about the way the game played out. Ultimately, you fell short in a game that you scratched and clawed to get back into. But to sit there and to say that the Patriots were mimicking the cadence or trying to throw the center off, that's a load of BS to me.
Well, the other thing, too, people are saying the Patriots are cheating again. Well, one, it's good that people are worried about that again. It means you're back. And two, we saw this the other day. You and I sitting next to each other at BC. There's a penalty for this.
Yes,
If there's an
there's a
actual
penalty called in that game.
Correct, that's what I'm saying.
Mimicking a snap count.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if it was that illegal, a flag would have been thrown and it would have been taken care of. So this is a bunch of nothing. I actually enjoy the fact that Vrabel gave it a name like Clapgate. I'm sure he could have came up with a better name. It's a little awkward, but it's typical Vrabel response, and I thought he handled it just fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to your point, it was called in the BC Notre Dame game on Saturday, and everybody that was sitting in the press box that wasn't me basically was sitting there going, what is that? I've never heard of that before. What is that penalty? Whatever else. It's a thing, and it does get called during the course of a season. And oftentimes it does get called. I think it's misinterpreted by the official who calls it oftentimes. it is the defense trying to communicate. I don't think that they're purposefully. It's not to say that they've never tried to purposefully throw off the quarterback's cadence or fall or force a an early snap. But all of that being said, oftentimes when it is called, I don't want to say it's by accident, but the defense isn't necessarily trying to bait the offense. It's usually the defense trying to communicate, and you'll get an overzealous official that'll decide to throw the flag. So I think that's the case here. I think Hawkins was trying to communicate. I think they're making a mountain out of a molehill. There's nothing here. There's nothing to see, in my opinion. I think it's not something that we should waste any more time on. We should move on from it. But to your point, if the national media picks it up and they start talking about it and they see it as, oh, here we go, the Patriots are 7-2. They must be cheating. After all, Mike Vrabel did play for Bill Belichick. And look, if we're willing to get stupid about it and go down that road, you know what? Then screw you and anybody else who's saying that. That is just idiotic. They're making way too much out of nothing.
Agreed. Waste of time. You have, and I know we're going to get to Tampa, but you have the biggest game of the year coming up. They won't talk about this the rest of the week. There's no shot.
Nor should they.
No.
Nor should they. If I'm Mike Vrabel of the players and a bunch of the players spoke today, I'm not talking about this. This is it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a waste of time. I'm not talking about it. There's nothing to talk about. The mighty Ken Matthias checks in. The mighty Ken Matthias checking in. I wanted the both of you use thoughts on how Drake May had a good connection with Demario Douglas after overthrowing him early in the game, then went back to him for the touchdown. Yeah, the touchdown pass was on a wheel route. Douglas was lined up in the backfield. But more importantly, Kevin, and you wrote about this today on anyfootballjournal.com, of course, Pop Douglas was playing with a heavy heart. He announced after the game in an interview with CBS that his uncle was shot and killed on Saturday night. He goes out and has a career game. And look, I believe in this stuff, okay? And I don't want to get into faith here. I don't want to turn this into, the New England theology show. But I believe in divine intervention. I believe in loved ones motivating people and spiritually helping them perform at a high level and be the best version of themselves. And I think this is what happened yesterday. 4 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown for Pop Douglas. Our career day. Like I said, he was playing with a heavy heart, but he came through for his team and his teammates. And I think I didn't notice it. I noticed he was different in the locker room after the game, because one thing we could say about Pop Douglas, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. He's always very positive. He's always smiling. He's always willing to talk to us. I mean, he is great with the media. He wasn't really himself yesterday, and he did go to the podium, so that was probably part of it, but you didn't get the sense that he was himself. And then you find out this news, and it's heartbreaking, man, because to be that age and to lose a loved one who, by all accounts, he was close with, that's rough.
Yeah, for one, on your point about yesterday, I guess we might have or probably could have seen something coming. If you remember, he went to the podium and then he came back like, I don't know, a minute or two later. And we were all like, you're done already? And he said, no, I have to get something that he wanted to bring to the podium with him. So I wonder if it was a little, kind of memorial thing or whatever that might be. Obviously, we were in the locker room and not in that press conference. But I asked Vrabel today, and it's sort of a bigger story for me with the whole culture thing. We talked a lot about culture, and so is Mike Vrabel, frankly, since he got hired. And I asked Vrabel today, and I have the question right here. I said, in terms of culture, when a guy like Pop Douglas goes through what he went through and this weekend and still wants to be out there for the team and for you, how much pride you take in it? And he gave me a really nice, long answer. But what stuck out to me, he said, I wish I had known. Credit to Pop. He was like, I just didn't want to be a distraction. The fact that the teammate or a player for him didn't want to, burden anybody else with that news before the game, I think speaks volumes about the connection Vrabel has been able to make already with players. Because I'm with you. I believe in all that stuff. But to not even tell your head coach and not want to put that on his plate, A, it's a credit to Pop, but B, again, I think it's a credit to the culture that's been built here. The word gets thrown around a lot, but that's culture in its purest form. Like, that's the realest example that you can have of it. So I thought Vrabel's answer today was very telling, and what Pop did yesterday, just sort of it's all encompassing of where this team is right now in terms of buy-in.
Oh, they're bought in, and it's not just because it reflects in their record. That's an easy way to look at it, right? You can look at it and say, well, they're 7-2. Of course, they're buying in. They're winning. No, you could tell they've bought in. I've been in this game a long time, and I might have never coached in the NFL. I've coached high school. I've coached small college, but I can tell you, a team that is bought in culturally has a different look to it. This team has a different look to it. It's not about the wins and losses. It's about them. It's about the way they interact, the brotherhood, them liking to be around each other, working hard, striving for one common goal, putting the team ahead of their own needs and interests. You could see all of that in this locker room. This is not hyperbole. This isn't me blowing smoke up Vrabel's ass. This is me being honest. You could see it with this team. It's just got a different vibe to it. And you know, it's very easy to get hung up on vibe in sports, right? We're always looking for a vibe, and especially with a first-year coach, has he changed things? If things changed, you can tell pretty quickly being around this football team in the spring and in the summer that the vibe was different, and you're seeing it even more now. These guys love playing together. They love playing for each other, and it shows. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, to get grown men to do that who are professional athletes. They have their own wants, desires, interests, and at the end of the day, it's hard to get a collection of 60 guys to come together on your active roster and your practice squad and play for each other and play for the organization and have the kind of success that they've had. It speaks to the kind of leader and coach Vrabel is, that he's been able to make that happen in such a short amount of time. It's impressive. Ken checks back in. Thoughts on running back Terrell Jennings scoring his first touchdown. He runs hard and is a good complementary running back to Henderson and Stevenson. Jennings himself, who went to the podium yesterday, also said that he suffered a personal loss over the weekend. A close friend passed on. So he was dealing with it too. He scored his first career NFL touchdown. That was pretty cool as well. As far as him being a compliment, I think he's a compliment in that he can be that vertical, straight ahead, short yardage power back that any team can use. You want that ideally to be one of your two backs that you play primarily. Your third back is typically more of your third down guy. In this case, Jennings is their third back, but he does fill an important role. And I think he's been a nice story. 11 carries yesterday, 35 yards. He had the touchdown. He also returns kicks. A lot of people think that the Patriots could potentially be in the market, and we'll get into the trade deadline here in a sec. But a lot of people think that the Patriots could potentially swing a trade by tomorrow afternoon for a running back. I'm not sure they will, man. I know they like Terrell Jennings, and he did a pretty good job yesterday of proving that he belongs on this roster.
He was productive and he didn't fumble. That's really all you could ask for, right? So if they get one, great. But again, as long as he doesn't turn the ball over and he's productive and you can get by as long as Stevenson is out, hopefully it's not for more than a few weeks. If it's more long-term, then I worry about Jennings, being a second down or a second back, I should say. But right now, he's fine for what you need.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think it's easy to say, all right, we're going to try to swing a deal tomorrow. And I think the Patriots will be active. And I would not be surprised if they made a couple of trades by tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. But again, I'm not sure running back is going to be a focal point. And that's not to say that Terrell Jennings is going to solve all their problems, okay? He's not the player that Antonio Gibson was in terms of the explosiveness and the versatility. But he's still a good football player. And he fits this scheme well, especially the man gap stuff in the run game. He fits the scheme well. He's a grinder. He works hard. He's tough. He's physical. And he is the kind of back that Mike Vrabel likes to have in his running back rotation. We saw that, of course, in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. He's not Derrick Henry. But my point is, he's that type of back, a guy that can really be effective inside the tackles. He could continue to carve out a bigger role for himself as we go along here. But, yeah, make no mistake about it, he has been a nice addition of late to this Patriots offense. And I think his role is going to only expand even more as we go along here, as the Patriots are going to start to lean on their running game more, especially now with the weather changing. It's going to start getting colder around here. You're going to need to develop that physicality more. I think Jennings is a guy who can play a big part in that. I mentioned the trade deadline. John Lyons, myself, and you talked about it yesterday briefly at the tail end of the Patriots Pulse post-game show. I do think the Patriots are making phone calls. I do think that they want to add a couple of pieces, specifically at edge, defensive end, maybe another corner or safety, perhaps a back. I think they are active, maybe even another offensive lineman. I do think they're active in terms of making phone calls, but it is really hard to tell if they're actually going to swing a deal and bring a player in. My question to you is, do they need to make a trade? Do they need to bring in another one or two players to fortify this roster tomorrow?
Yes, but no. Like, it's hard to explain. So, if they believe that they're legitimate contenders, and you know this, I think they are, just given the way the AFC looks right now, and really the whole NFL, the league is really down this year. You can
I
make
don't think it's that the league is down.
no,
I keep hearing that, and I think that that's a disingenuous statement. I don't think the league is down. I think that it just means there's more parity. You've got more teams that are in contention, and isn't that what we want ultimately?
yes,
We don't want this to turn into Major League Baseball where it's top heavy and the money teams are the ones that can only win a championship. We saw that the other night. And granted, that was a series of two money teams. But my point is, you want parity. I know people are quick to say, "Oh, the league is down." Well, that's kind of a lazy argument. And I'm not saying this strictly to you, Kevin. I've heard this from a lot of people. Oh, the NFL is down. It's not that the NFL is down. I think that there's competitive balance in the league, and that's a good thing.
so you're right. But in terms of maybe where we thought the top teams would be, it's more wide open than anybody thought it would be.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I don't think that the top teams, to your point, are as dominant as we expected. Philadelphia is not dominating. Don't get me started on the Packers. I vomited in my mouth multiple times yesterday. Kansas City's 5-4, but
right.
there are a lot of people that also thought Kansas City could potentially be on the outside looking into the playoffs. Buffalo has looked fraudulent at times. Cincinnati lost Burrow. I think the one team that surprises me the most in terms of how bad they've been,
Baltimore.
and they look like they're going to start getting back on track here, is Baltimore. I
Yeah.
didn't see this from them. I thought that they would be much better. They've been terrible thus far, and a big reason for that is they also were missing Lamar Jackson. But yeah, I think that there's some competitive balance in the league,
Well, so I thought Baltimore was going to win the AFC. So, but no, if they
which would have been a good pick. And it could still happen, man.
No,
That's a talented football team. They just got Draymond Jones tonight from the Titans. They'll turn it around.
if the Patriots believe that they can legitimately contend, then yeah, you need to shore up the depth in a few places, but not at the expense of next year or the year after. You've kind of talked me off this. That first round pick is not going to be as high as it's been the last few years, and I think they have either 10 or 11 picks total next year. You still need to build through the draft. So,
Yes, 100%.
And you've talked me into this.
There's nobody that's going to be available in the next
correct.
20 hours that's worth trading that first round pick for, realistically.
No, and Cincy, I don't think Cincy is going to get a first rounder for Hendrickson.
No, they don't want to trade Trey Hendrickson.
Right.
That's why they're putting that out there.
So, yes, they should be making phone calls. And like you said, I'm sure they will. And I'm sure they'll be getting a bunch too. The one place I would say maybe look harder now, depending on what Booty's status is, might be receiver. But if they think they're a championship contender, yes, you add, but you don't sell the future for this year, even if you do think you can make a run.
Yeah. And of course, Kayshon Boutte left yesterday's game with a hamstring injury. Hamstrings can be tricky. Hamstrings can end up either being a 1 week thing, or they can linger and be a multi-week injury. Certainly one worth keeping an eye on. And I think you do bring up a good point in that wide receiver could potentially be a position that they take a closer look at here in the next few hours going into tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon, because that could be a position that if a player is available at a price you can stomach, you can certainly upgrade that position. All right, back to the game. The mighty Ken Matthias checks in again. Of course, as we know with Ken, he's one of the big fans of the show, and he only talks Patriots. He'll disappear as soon as we start talking college. Watching the game, I kept on seeing May scramble, not sliding much, and if no one was open, he would run for yards, which is great. Do you guys think Vrabel and McDaniels have told him to try and slide and not keep taking hits? Yes, they've told him that, 100%. He might have heard me telling him to do that yesterday at one point early in the game. The coach and me came out, and I'm yelling slide, slide, slide in the press box, and I got a couple of looks, but whatever, man. I don't want the guy to get hurt. Well, Ken goes on to say also 6 sacks he took yesterday. Well, listen, when you get sacked 6 times, Ken, it's not that Drake May voluntarily wanted to get his ass kicked 6 times. The offensive line didn't play well, which when I look at this question and this comment, I really want to focus on the offensive line for a second here, because here's the thing. They've given up 11 sacks in the last 2 games. There's some regression there, Kevin. They were pretty good there for about a 3 or 4 game period, but they're starting to go backwards again. Does it concern you? Does it concern you? I should say, is it concerning you? Does it concern you that they've given up 11 sacks in the last 2 games? Should we start getting worried about this unit again?
Sorry, I thought you were done the first time.
No,
yeah,
okay.
and we talked about it. We talked about it yesterday with John Lyons. There needs to be more of a balance with the age gap on that offensive line. You have one side that's rookies and one side that's on the back 9 of their career. Well, I guess Mike Onwenu was still fairly young, but in terms of Bradbury and Moses, there's age there. So I brought this up to you guys yesterday. Mike Vrabel has already talked about load management, for lack of a better term, when it comes to those guys. Now, he's only talking, during the weekend practice, not games like the NBA, but they need to be careful. And that's why I think O-line, again, we talked about this yesterday, they don't grow on trees, but if you can add depth tomorrow, you probably should, if you can. The age thing worries me a little bit, and in terms of the youth, that worries me too, because they're learning on the fly still. You might get Drake May hurt at some point, but in terms of him sliding and stuff like that, I thought he was more decisive when he wanted to run yesterday, which was good, but he was jittery. The pressure got to him a little bit. We saw Mike Vrabel go over to him on the sideline. Everybody's talked about that clip now. Drake May's still young. Like, he's still learning with this new offensive line too. To your point, he's not trying to get sacked 6 times. It is what it is. So, yes, the O-line does worry me a little bit, mostly because of the age and just sort of where that group is in terms of, the NFL spectrum when it comes to youth and experience and veteran wear and tear.
The load management thing is interesting. You're getting into the time of the year where coaches at all 3 levels start resting guys, especially their best players or players that they think need it. So that aspect of it, we're getting to that time of the year where you're going to need to start managing snaps at practice. So I'm not surprised that he said that. I will say this, though, and I think that this is an important point to make. Before we start throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, and before we hit the panic button on the offensive line, I do want to remind people of a couple of things here. One, last week you're going up against a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer in Myles Garrett, and at the time, the number 1 ranked defense in the league. Okay? Yesterday, you went up against another one of the top defenses in the league. They're one of the 3 best defenses in the league. They're the best secondary statistically in the league, and they blitzed more than anybody coming into this game at 48.1%. So the reason I say those 2 things is they do need to be taken into account when we have this conversation. I think it would be disingenuous of us to say, well, the offensive line's regressed again. The right side is old. The left side is young. It's gone to shit. They suck. It's over. Drake May's going to get hurt. Let's pump the brakes before we start getting insane about this. They went up against 2 defenses that can rush the passer and rush the passer well. And they can do it out of their base fronts, but they can also do it with pressure. You're talking about 2 defensive coordinators in Jim Schwartz, Jeff Ulbrich, that are high-pressure guys that believe in getting after the quarterback, that are willing to play coverages that allow them to pressure. Those are 2 tough defenses this season to go up against if your offensive line struggles with TE stunts and blitzes. You don't want to have to deal with defensive lines and defenses like that. The Patriots have had to deal with them the last 2 weeks. So it is something I do think we need to take into account here. We can't gloss over that fact that they play 2 good, aggressive defenses that can rush the passer.
No, 100%. And Garrett Bradbury talked today and flat out said 6 sacks is way too many. We were all sick watching the film earlier in the morning, and we have to be better. So they're taking accountability. It's just, it is what it is. To your point, you played some really good, pass rushing defenses. So, again, to your original question, yes, I'm still worried just for the reasons I said, but also they're not playing scrubs. Like, the matchups are not easy. So you have to take them with a grain of
I
salt.
don't want no scrubs. Plain and simple.
Not bad.
Like the song says. Go ahead.
I
It
got
was
nothing. I
I know.
can't top that. Keep going.
All right, Ken, thanks for that comment, man. I really appreciate it. The one that was on the screen there just now. Thanks for the positive comment. And yes, John's terrific. I've done radio with him for a long time. If you don't know, John and I are doing the Patriots Pulse pregame show. So check that out every Sunday morning. It's usually around 9:30, 10 o'clock that we go live for about 45 minutes and we preview the game. And it's a little different than what you get with other pregame shows in that we focus more on the numbers and the matchups and what to expect in the game. So it's a little different. We're not bringing on guests or anything else. It's more, you know what, here's what you have to look for ahead of today's game. So I enjoy doing that with John and working with him. Like I said, I've done radio with him for a long time. So it's an easy fit. And I think he's doing a good job on the show. And I think that the show has been well received. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Stone. Just a reminder, if you're in the market to sell your current home, purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846, or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And before we move on to the college talk here, Stone, I want to look ahead to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. I really believe that for a while there, we thought this Atlanta game was going to be the litmus test game. They won it. They passed the test. But I think this game on Sunday is going to be the true litmus test for them. They're going to go on the road against a good Tampa Bay team that's one of the best teams in the NFC, a team that plays well at home, a team that has an MVP candidate at quarterback in Baker Mayfield. If the Patriots go down there and win this game, then I think a lot more people are going to be comfortable saying, yeah, I'm on board. This team is a contender. But the reality is this is going to be a tough challenge for them because you're going up against a pretty good defense that has a lot of pedigree and championship experience with guys like Winfield and guys like David and Vita Vea. Those guys have played in a lot of big games. They're good football players. This is going to be another defense that's going to be a stiff test for the offensive line because Todd Bowles does like the pressure. And as I mentioned, Mayfield is playing at an MVP level. And don't forget about rookie wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, who has been sensational for the Buccaneers. He's the leader in the clubhouse for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Patriots are going to have their hands full in this game on Sunday.
Yeah, look, it's the first time you're, in a big spot since the Buffalo game, but really one of the few times in the last 5 years. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo are on this game. It's the CBS.
Jim Nantz, friends. Hello, friends.
It's the big spot that.
Admit it, Stone. You have to. First of all, do we even remember the last time Nantz and Romo called the Patriots game? I don't. I don't think they called one last year.
They definitely didn't last year. I don't think they have since we've covered the team. Like, I honestly believe that.
I don't know if it's that long because I've seen Jim Nantz there. So
maybe
I would say at least it's 2023 anyway.
So I was going to say maybe a Mac Jones game when they were 8-0 at one point. But I don't remember them. So
it's been a while since Nantz and Romo have called the Patriots game. It's been a while since we've heard Tony say, "Here we go, Jim."
Well, we don't hear them technically while we're there, but it's a big spot.
Well, you're going to hear them on Sunday. They're going to be on your TV screen. What the hell does it have to do with?
Oh no, I'm thinking it's a home game. I'm losing my mind. So we will hear them. So that's good. But my point is, you haven't been in this spot in a while. It's a prove-it game for them and really for Drake, especially after the performance he just had. If he can bounce back against the defense that you just talked about, that's going to make life hard on that offensive line. So big spot for them to bounce back. If you win this game, and I already think that they are a contender, but you have the Giants and the Jets coming up, and I think Cincy after that, which means you're looking
Jets, Cincy, Giants.
Yeah, you're looking at 10 wins right there. You're already at 7-2. So again, I've already said you fans can really start to kind of look ahead
Yeah,
and I think
that's ridiculous. I think we need to pump the brakes on that talk.
sure,
But go ahead. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
sure. So, but again, if you do win this game, and I don't know if Baker is still in that MVP conversation. I don't know if you still have him in there. I don't think I do. Um,
I do,
but
because I think going into the season,
yeah,
Philadelphia was a definitive favorite in the NFC. Then Green Bay swings the Micah Parsons trade. They also were in that conversation. They're clearly not a Super Bowl contender. Detroit was still in the conversation. The question was, how would the coordinator changes affect them? It's affected them a little bit, but they've pretty much looked the part, even though they lost yesterday. Tampa Bay was a team that we thought could be a playoff team, but we weren't sure how good they were. I think they've been better than advertised. I would say the same thing for Seattle. They're 6-2. I don't think enough people are talking about them and the job that Mike McDonald has done there.
no, that was impressive last night. So, but just by overall point, this is a big spot for Drake and the team in general in terms of all eyes on you. Um, a lot of people are on this Tampa team and on, Baker Mayfield right now. So if you can somehow get a win down there, and again, with the schedule coming up, you set yourself up really nicely for the rest of December and, hopefully into January. So it's not a killer if you lose this game. I think if you get blown out, it's a step back, only a little one, but still a step back. But as long as you're competitive, you can't really, I don't want to call it house money, but they're in a good spot here. If you can go down and steal one, people really might start to look at you a different way.
All right, crack statistician Ken Matthias checks back in. If I remember correctly, it could have been in 2023, Bills and Patriots in Buffalo, or 2022.
No, maybe that playoff game?
Dude, that playoff game was 4 years ago. That was
21.
2021. It was January of 22.
Right.
That was the 2021 season.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's been a while. Which, by the way, I mean, I get my dander up when people talk about how bad the Patriots have been. It's been 2 years of them being bad. Like I said, I know people are going to point to the 7-9 season.
You went off on this yesterday.
I did. And I know people are going to point to the COVID 7-9 season, or people are going to point to the 8-9 season in 2022. But again, they were in playoff contention those 2 years. And when you go 7-9, 8-9, you're middle of the pack in this league. You're not bad. They've been bad the last 2 years. But let's pump the brakes here. Somebody said this today, and I think it's so true. Preschoolers out there have never seen the Patriots be good. I mean, come on. We're not talking about the stink fest that the Cleveland Browns have been. We're not talking about the dumpster fire through the years that the Jacksonville Jaguars have been. We're not talking about how bad the Tennessee Titans have been the last few years. I mean, and you can make the case the last couple of years the Patriots have been just as bad or worse than the Titans. But my point is, there are other franchises that have been bad for longer, and those fan bases are starving for a winner. And they don't appear to be anywhere near having a team that looks nearly as good as the Patriots do right now. So, needless to say, it's been a long time for Nance and Romo, Tracy Wolfson. They have not called the Patriots game in a long time. This will be their first one, at least in 2 years, we think. It could be even longer than that. But again, Stone, it amazes me you thought it was a home game. That blows my mind.
Yeah, I got nothing. I lost my mind there for a minute.
Yeah, it happens often. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're excited to hear Tony Romo. Here we go, Jim. Sound like he's constipated.
Honestly, the 98.5 broadcast on the app usually lines up. I'm a big Bob and Sosi guy, so I'll probably listen to them instead.
You're a big Bob and Sosi guy. What about
Jesus,
Zoe?
Bob and Zoe.
Oh, Bob and Zoe. Yeah, Bob
Jesus.
and Sosi. Bob, we know you're one person, and we appreciate you, my friend, and the job that you do on the broadcast. And of course, Zoe, my guy, he does a great job, and he is fantastic. They do a great job, and our good buddy Mark Capello producing the games, of course. He's the best in the business. So it's a great broadcast, and I think you bring up a good point. You know what? If you don't want to listen to Here We Go, Jim, you can put on the radio broadcast and go from there. Ken, by the way, thanks for checking in again. We appreciate it. We know you're going to disappear now like a good cloud, so nice talking to you. See you later. All right, so let's turn our attention here to college football, Stone. And again, I want to thank Ken for checking in. Number one fan of the show. I mean, I know some people out there going to watch this and say, that's bullshit. I check in every now and then. I know. But Matthias is pretty consistent. Boston College, Notre Dame, thoughts? better game than you thought it was going to be? Just about what you thought it was going to be? Worse game than you thought it was going to be?
Of course, it was better than I expected. I think I had them losing like 52-10.
I thought that number was insane. There was no way on earth they were
31?
losing by 30 plus. It was
Yeah, no,
31 at kickoff. I thought that number was just flat out stupid. And it just goes to show you that Vegas truly doesn't pay attention all the time, because no one in their right mind should have touched that number. So
in terms of betting, no, but I did think it was going to be a lot uglier than it was. So look, on one hand, you have to give them credit. That defense showed up very, very early. You had the 3-and-out and a punt the first two series against Notre Dame's offense. But in the end, it's the same story all season long, even though they got some big-time pieces back that we had been told were out for the year in Bam Crouch, and I'm missing another one there too on defense as well. But Jaden
Bam
Skeet
Crouch is on defense, Jaden Skeet on offense.
and Skeet on offense, yeah. Turbo Richard on offense as well was supposed to be out. So look, defensively, it was the big play, which has been a problem all season long. A 94-yard touchdown run. I think one snap after an interception by Grayson James when you're going in to, I believe, take the lead. I think it was 12-10 still at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So mistakes, turnovers, the effort was there. You have to give them that. They're still playing hard for Bill O'Brien, which you've said all along that they would do, as ugly as it's been, but you're just not as talented. Like, it is what it is. We keep going back to the same thing. You can't match up talent-wise with a Notre Dame or some of the upper echelon teams in the country. It is what it is. So you're 1-8. You now have the red bandana game this weekend, which it's wild that game is just sort of a noon throwaway on either ACC Network or the CW, whatever it is. But you're 1-8. You got 3 chances left to put something good on film. If some of those guys are going to hop in the portal, we don't know. But I give them credit for the effort. It could have been ugly, and I give that crowd credit too. That place was packed. Yes, there was a lot of Notre Dame fans.
I think that crowd was 60-40 Notre Dame.
I do too, but it was still packed, and that student section, just as well as I do, they're out of there at halftime. Usually, no matter what. They stuck around, so you got to give them credit there. The biggest thing to me is what Bill O'Brien said post-game. He said, this isn't going to be a memorable team on the outside, but it will be for me. And I'm sure as a coach, you can appreciate that, talking about the guys continuing to show up and give effort through injuries and still go to film and grind out every single day. I know they're on scholarship and most of them are being paid to be there, but teams can check out. And O'Brien said that, and this team hasn't. So that's to be commended, if nothing else. But a long season just gets longer, and we still got 4 weeks left. 3 of them have a game. They still have 1 bye as well.
I was not surprised by their effort. I knew they would come out and play hard in this game. It's a rivalry game. It's the Holy War. The game means a lot to the school. You knew they were going to come out and play well, and they played hard. And I do think they played well. Look, Notre Dame puts you in a bind. If you don't commit bodies to the box against Jeremiah Love and you give them a soft box or a 5-man box, he's going to rip you to shreds. And so they played a lot of cover zero. They committed a lot of bodies to the box. Notre Dame did make them pay with 3 shot plays that set up scores. And then, of course, Jeremiah Love ended up breaking one when they decided to back off for a 94-yard touchdown run. But I think aside from the big plays, and look, the defense, to your point, played well. They did give up those 4 big plays. But for the most part, I thought they were competitive. And let's not forget, they opened the third quarter with a 12-minute drive. So they did what they can do given the talent and the injury situation. They did what they can do to put themselves in position to at least have a shot at winning this game. Ultimately, they didn't get it done. And while I appreciate what O'Brien said, and I commend him for what he said about this being a memorable team to him, the reality is now when you look at where they're at, they're 1-8. You're staring at 1-9 in the face on Saturday against a very good SMU team led by Rhett Lashley, who just got a brand new extension. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the country. They're coming off a big win over Miami at home. Sure, you're hoping that they could potentially come in and overlook BC. And, of course, I think the Eagles will be supremely motivated this week for the red bandana game. But at the end of the day, we hate to continue to harp this point, but they're just not good enough right now to beat programs like Notre Dame, like SMU, and even a Georgia Tech next week. And yeah, you've got 3 games left in the season. You got to figure out how you want this thing to end. In a perfect world, you run the table, you win all 3, and you build some momentum going into the offseason of next year. It's unrealistic given the talent gap and the injuries here. But the bottom line is, if you're Bill O'Brien and his staff, you got to take a lot of positives out of this. And the number one positive is that these guys are still playing hard for you, that they haven't quit. And I think they're going to continue to play hard for this staff through the end of the season. Obviously, we've got a ton of time to sit here and debate what they're going to do, what's next. We think we know what's next. I fully expect Bill O'Brien to be back, which brings me to Matthias's question. Now all of a sudden he's fake interested in college football. Wait, I had a question. What if it's in the chat about Bill O'Brien? All right, Matthias, listen, I like you doing it. I appreciate you coming on the show and supporting us, but, you know, put the bottle of the pipe down here. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Ken may have clarified here. After losing 8 in a row, could O'Brien be on the hot seat, or is he in it for the long haul road ahead? Ken is so good at setting us up, Stone. We got to give him credit for that. He lays the foundation for some of our topics. So, hat tip to you, Matthias. Ken, I think that's a good question. And so, Kevin, I know you have, I don't want to say you have information or you've heard things, because we don't want to speculate, right? And you know that I will never do it. I'm a coach first. I'm never going to sit here and ask for people to get fired or speculate on their job status. But Ken brings up a good point here in that this is a question that's going to come up a lot in the next 4 weeks. What's going to happen with Bill O'Brien? Does he want to stay? Do they want him to stay? You cannot convince me that they're going to move on from him. If Bill O'Brien's not the coach at Boston College in 2026, it's because Bill O'Brien decided to move on. I don't think the school's going to move on. I'd be shocked. Ultimately, I don't think Bill O'Brien's going anywhere. I think he's going to be here. Based on your sources and what you're hearing out there, what is your gut feeling? And this is a conversation we're going to have moving forward for a while here, so we don't necessarily have to empty the tank on it here. What does your gut feeling tell you about Bill O'Brien's future with this program?
So I'm going to hold that because I have a question for you about the quarterbacks first. You know very well that I think Grayson James should have been a starter since day one. I don't think it was ever a real competition. Now that you've seen how things play out, and you talked about, they have to look ahead at how you want to see these next 3 games go. I'm of the belief you start Grayson for the next 2 or maybe even the next 3. I think as a senior, he's earned the right, as long as he's healthy, of course, to go out and be that starter. But I could also see Shaker Rising or Rising at least getting a start. That last game against Syracuse, you got to know what you have in him for a full game. Is that sort of what you would do too?
If I were going to do that, I'm starting him the rest of the season.
Shaker?
Because I don't think one game's going to tell you anything. Even if he goes out there and he plays well, are you going to walk away from that one game and say, yeah, he's our guy in 2026, or at least he could be in the mix come spring ball? No, I don't think you're going to glean that from one game. If you're going to go in that direction, start him this week, start him against Georgia Tech, start him against Syracuse. If your thought process is, we'll start him against Syracuse, and that'll give us 2 weeks to get him ready, okay, fine. But I'm not sure you're going to take so much away from that game unless he just plays lights out and he looks like a starting quarterback. I don't think you're going to get that much out of that game that should be your thought process. If you're thinking about starting someone other than Grayson James and Dylan Lonergan, then do it now. Pull the trigger this week. Start him the rest of the way and live with the results. You're going to have a historically bad season as it is. You might as well give this kid a chance to play and see what you have in him, because here's the truth. If he can't play, if he can't be the guy, then you're in a tough spot here, because you're going to lose James. You could potentially lose Lonergan, and I don't want to speculate here, but if Lonergan decides he's not happy, doesn't want to be here, he could leave. And if Rising's not the guy, now you really have to start over at that position. So if I'm them, I'm tempted to do it, because you got to see what you have in him or anybody else really behind those 2 other guys. But he would be the logical choice. I would start him if I were them, and I would do it this week.
And you can make the argument, too, it'd be smart to do it with 2 games at home as well. And you still have that bye. So, you can start him for 2 games, go watch, film for a week, and then have him start against Syracuse too. But
Yeah,
I still
one game is just not enough of a
no,
sample
no,
to
no. I'm
make that
saying
decision.
no. I'm saying start him these next 2
No,
weeks.
no, I know what you're saying. I'm
Yeah,
just saying if they could very well do what you're saying, which is start James the next 2, you got the bye, which by the way, that is the stupidest bye I've ever seen in my life.
after Thanksgiving.
Why? Right. Why do they have a bye with 1 week left? Why
Oh
wouldn't
no,
you give them that bye earlier?
before Thanksgiving. What am I saying? So that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Back to
But
the
my
coaching.
point is they may decide to do what you're saying, which is
Yeah,
we got a game left. It'll give us 2 weeks to get him ready. Let's see what he can do. Let's get him ready.
yeah. I'm still on the start James train, but I'm still. I don't understand how last weekend went. As far as I know, James was about 90% ish healthy. Lonergan played 8 snaps.
But
Like
but that's the other thing we need to keep in mind here.
the hell.
Lonergan still has what, 2 years after this year?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's not discount that. Let's not throw him away. They could also potentially go back to him and say, let's give him a shot to finish the season, and hopefully he plays well enough that he builds some momentum going into the offseason. So don't discount that either. He's going to be in the mix here too if they decide to make another quarterback change, which, by the way, is not the healthiest thing for the team.
No, and it brings me back to the coaching thing. I'm completely with you. That school will not pay a buyout. They will not fire him. And I don't think they're dumb enough to think that they can do better right now. We've said this for
No,
weeks now. I'm sorry, I'm boring you.
no,
Um,
I'm just tired. And yes, typically you do bore me, but
I know.
this is me just being tired. No, you don't
So
bore me. I'm kidding, obviously.
if I believe if he doesn't want to deal, and you know this, coaches take bullets sometimes that they don't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily have to take. He's taking a lot this year.
Yeah.
For reasons he really should not have to. And we've been over this. We'll just leave it at it's financial. I think he deserves a lot more support than he's getting. I believe you feel roughly the same way.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. 100%.
and
To
to his
your
credit,
point, they're not going to do better than him. They know that, and anybody with a half a brain should know that, especially in this coaching cycle, man. You've got a
well,
lot of big time jobs that are open right
yeah,
now. You're not going to be the most appealing job in this cycle. You're probably not even going to be in the top 5 of
top
appealing
10.
jobs in this cycle. So when you're talking about schools like Florida, LSU, Penn State, Virginia Tech, there's a lot of big time jobs open out there. And for all we know, another big time job could come open here. If there's movement from one school to another, if a team doesn't finish well, it would be stupid for them to move on from him in this coaching cycle, knowing that they're not going to get a candidate as good as him. His replacement's not going to be as good. So it would behoove them to hold on to him. And of course, as you said, the buyout piece.
Correct. Well, that's the biggest thing to me.
Oh,
But
absolutely. I agree.
I don't think, and you know this, when he took the job, I thought he could retire as a BC coach. Like I thought this was
So
perfectly
did
set
I.
up. I thought it was perfectly set up for this to be, his sort of defining career ending legacy that he's the guy to bring BC back. Unfortunately, he hasn't gotten the help that I think he thought he was going to get. So for me, everything starts above him. For me, now, having said all that, it still shouldn't look the way it's looked all year. I completely admit that. 1-8 is 1-8, and that's not as our old, your favorite head coach and one of my favorites, Bill Parcells, always said, your all-rate record is. So 1-8 screams that there it's been ugly, and it has been, but unless he doesn't want to take those bullets and deal with ultimately fighting the people above him to try to make this successful, I could see him leaving it at that point. I think you could get an NFL analyst or coordinator job in 10 minutes. So
Well, right, but you're not going to give up a head coaching job. I don't
right,
care how bad it's been this season. If you're Bill O'Brien at 55 years old, you're not giving up a head coaching job making $5 million a year to go be an analyst somewhere, a position that in comparison to where he's at right now is a lackey position. You're not making that transition. I don't care.
I hear
It
you.
would have to be really bad at Boston College for him to say, I want to go become an analyst at another school or go back to the NFL. And I, quite frankly, I don't think it is that bad. I think
I
that
don't either.
between the injuries and a lack of talent. And by the way, he has an easy out with the lack of talent. He could say, I'm playing, this is not a knock on the kids that are there that were recruited by the previous staff, but in theory, and I don't think he's going to do this because this isn't his style, he's never going to throw the kids under the bus. But for us on the outside looking in, you could say, well, he's playing with the other guys still. He needs time to bring in his own guys, even though he's brought in his own guys in the portal the last couple of years. But he's going to need more time to bring in his own guys. That's when we should judge him.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is important to point out that I don't think enough people are talking about here is Boston College is going to have a new president in April. What is that new president going to tell Bill O'Brien after the season? Is he going to pledge to commit more money to football? Is Father Leahy going to be the messenger in that conversation? Is he going to tell O'Brien what he wants to hear, and then the new president is going to reinforce it? It's going to make for some interesting conversations, but that's another part of this that we need to keep an eye on. And unfortunately, he's not coming in until April, which means that's kind of a ways away. So they're going to have these conversations right after the season to figure things out.
So I know we're going to move on, but the three things you just hit on. One, the new president thing, all I keep hearing, and I know you've heard mostly the same thing, is it's going to be different. This guy cares about sports. They're going to throw money at it. I come back with, well, 2 weeks ago, Bill O'Brien told us there's been a commitment, but when he was asked about it last week for, sort of for more clarification, he said those questions are for above me. So what is that promise that he's gotten? Is it financial? I don't believe it is. So I hope I'm wrong, because that's where everything starts for BC right now if they really, truly want to be competitive and not just a laughing stock in the ACC. The two other things. One, I'm losing my train of thought. In terms of going forward, you're right. It's hard to give up that money, but what if he wants to negotiate a buyout? And we know what it is right now, but if he wants out that badly, he could always say, well, let's meet in the middle somewhere. So I always think that's on the table as well. I'm with you. I don't think he's going to leave, but if I were him, it wouldn't be surprising to see it happen because of the people above him making the job harder than it needs to be. So look, I don't think they're a mess either. And the third thing was he was actually asked about Hafley's guys a few weeks ago and took the high road, as you would expect, and as you said, he would do. But you're right, he's only had one class. Like, you've got to let this guy recruit. The problem is, if you do go in the portal, and this is no knock on FCS football, anybody that has been following us knows that we love it, but when you can only afford to go get guys from Merrimack and from Princeton, yes, they got a Jason Hewitt from Michigan, but and a Dylan Lonergan from Alabama, but those are few and far between for BC. When you can only shop at a certain level, for lack of a better term, well, what do you expect? Like, the portal guys just aren't going to have the impact. Virginia, for instance, added 31 guys from the portal, and look at them now. I think they're 12th in the country. So it can be done, but you have to be allowed to go pick out a certain type or certain level of talent that they just can't shop at right now. So if all of that gets fixed, I'm with you. I don't think it's that bad, but there's a ton to be figured out. And we didn't even talk about the staff. That's for further down the road. There's a ton of questions that need to be answered very quickly after that last game.
The problem is when you're this bad, inevitably there's going to be change.
Of course.
And oftentimes, and I don't want to speak out of place here, but oftentimes that change is necessitated by the administration saying, look, we need to be better next year. We need to be more competitive. We need to be better coached. We believe in you, but we don't believe in the people around you. You're going to have to make changes. So it's a sad reality of the business, but there's going to be changes on that staff after the season. You cannot be this bad and it goes without change. That's not going to happen. And not only will there be change, but to be honest with you, I think there's going to be a lot of change on this staff. I think that this staff is not going to look like what we've gotten to know here the last couple of years. There'll be some new faces coming in for sure this offseason. UConn picks up a win over UAB. They won 38-19. That is the Huskies' 6th win of the season. They are now bowl eligible. They got a big one on Saturday with Manny Diaz and Duke coming to town. This is the 3rd time in 4 years that the Huskies are eligible for a bowl under Jim Mora. They've got a couple of tough games coming up. Their last 2 home games of the season. You've got Duke this week, and then you have Air Force next week. I think it's going to be a tough game to win for them this week. But given the way Joe Fagnano and this offense are playing, they're certainly going to have a pretty good shot. But it's great to see this program be bowl eligible again. When you consider, and I don't think that people talk about this enough, but when you consider how much of the focal point at UConn is on those 2 basketball programs, the fact that Jim Mora has been able to come in and win at a level that Randy Edsall was winning in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I think that speaks to just how great a coach he is and the job he's done there. And I know it's been kind of a frustrating season with the losses to Delaware and Rice, but this team is good, and this team is bowl eligible again, and this team is in a pretty good spot to potentially win 7 or 8 games, which, yeah, it might not be the season you had last year, but if somehow this team can win 7 regular season games or 8 regular season games, and let's say they win a bowl game, that's 9 wins again. Now you're in a pretty good streak here, and now this program, which I think is already appealing, is going to become even more appealing.
So, 3 bowl games in 4 years for where that program was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when them and UMass were the 2 laughing stocks in the country. It's amazing what he's done. Talent-wise, Joe Fagnano, and you've said this to me now, he's making a case to be drafted at some point. That's how good he's been.
He's been that good, and I think that needs to be a talking point as well.
And I think Skylar Bell is in that same camp.
Oh, he'll get drafted. I'd be surprised if he didn't get drafted.
Yeah. So
you're talking about a guy that had a bag thrown in his direction by Michigan. Scouts know about it. I've talked to a couple of scouts about him they're very high on him. So
right. But in terms of Mora, if I'm a UConn fan, I start to get a little bit worried because I think he might start getting some phone calls. He's earned that right. He's earned the right if he ever wanted to at least listen if a bigger school came calling, again, to turn that program around and to make it respectable again. At the very least, conferences should be looking at them now, and that wasn't the case 4 years ago. It has been maybe the last couple of years, but he's done everything in his power to change the image of that school. I would not be surprised if he starts getting phone calls this offseason, if he didn't already.
I think his age is going to factor in this, though.
True.
He's done a tremendous job there, and I do think he'll garner some interest. And I'm not pushing ageism here. I'm just being honest. I think, first of all, I think he's pretty happy and content at UConn. He's getting the support he needs. Of course, he wants more, but the school and donors and alumni, they've stepped up. They've recognized that they needed to do more to help this program get to a place where it's consistently competitive and successful. So
it's the opposite of BC
right now. But I do think he's getting that at UConn. And again, I'm not saying that bigger programs or bigger, administrators in those programs aren't going to look at Jim Mora, but I do think ultimately that they're probably going to want someone a little younger. But to your point, I do think he's going to garner interest. There's going to be programs that are going to be willing to have a conversation with him and say, hey, given what you've done at a place that's been traditionally hard to win at, we think you could do it at our place. He's going to garner interest. I just don't know if it's going to be worth him leaving UConn, though, because what program are you leaving UConn for, right? Like, I'll give you a hypothetical, and I'm only speculating here. Again, I don't want to open up Pandora's box, but let's say Jeff Brom leaves Louisville. It's his alma mater. I don't see it happening. He has everything he needs there. But let's say he decides to leave Louisville and he goes, I don't know, to Penn State. Could Louisville be a potential landing spot for Jim Mora? Could Louisville look at this and say, well, he's a guy that can come in, win right away. He's a proven program builder. He's done it at a place that's tough to win. We have a similar profile in that we've been predominantly a basketball school, but can he keep it going based on what Jeff Brom established? So, again, it's a hypothetical, but that could be the potential situation he'd be looking at in terms of a next job. I think he's going to stick around. I think he's going to get a pay raise, and I think he's going to stick
No.
around. I think he's happy. He's content. He's in his 60s. He's not necessarily yearning to move again. He and his wife are empty nesters. They're not looking at it as, all right, yeah, I'm sure he'd love to fatten the bank account, but he could do that at UConn. I think he can get a pay bump at UConn and be happy. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But nonetheless, I agree. He's probably going to garner some interest.
No, I was going to say, if they're smart, you give them a raise this year, or you extend them, whatever it is. Just real quick, what about the NFL? You think he'd ever have a shot going back there? I'm not saying he's a head coach. I'm saying he's a coordinator.
He's not going to leave UConn and go to the
No.
NFL to be a coordinator. Man, no, you don't give up being a head coach unless he just gets tired of
The
the
NIL.
NIL and,
Yeah.
and recruiting other people's players and then recruiting his players to stay. Unless he ends up feeling like Nick Saban, where it's like, you know what, I'm done with chasing 18 to 22-year-olds to be a part of my program year-round, 7 days a week, 350 days a year. I don't see him doing that. I think at the end of the day, he's going to look at it and say, you know what, I'm winning here. I built the program and the culture that I want. I think the university values what he brings to the table in terms of raising the profile of the program and the department. I could see him getting a raise. I don't see him going anywhere. But again, you never know. Real quick, Harvard, Yale both win in the Ivy League. Harvard continues to be in control of their own destiny. Big win this week against a good Dartmouth team. That was an impressive win for the Crimson.
Trap game coming up this week, I guess, against the last place Columbia. The only thing is, I don't think this Harvard team is capable of falling into a trap like that. Their offense is
Look, I like John Pompey at Columbia. They're not losing to Columbia, so there is no trap game.
You're right. That Dartmouth team is arguably the second best team in the Ivy League, and they made it look easy at times. They had to pull away a little bit later, but Jaden Craig continues to be a beast. They are now ranked, I believe, 13th in the FCS coaches poll this week, and they have like you said, they have the inside track. They do still have Penn before you get to that Yale game, but we say it every single year now. That last weekend, Harvard Yale, it's probably going to decide the Ivy League, and now it decides, the first ever FCS playoff contender from that league. So that race, the Ivy League just doesn't disappoint, man. It's ridiculous every single year.
It's good stuff. And Yale has traveled to Brown this week, which that would be more of a trap game.
Yeah, that's true.
In Columbia, Harvard. And as always, and I remind Ryan Barry of this on the college preview show, don't write off Penn. They'll be.
No, that's not bad. It took me a minute, but they're actually good. So
like most things.
Yeah, I was going to say, it works and it's not bad.
Yes. That could be more of a trap game because Brown is just so Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, and
Penn they were 3-1 a couple of weeks ago and riding high, and they've come back to earth the last few weeks here. So, but I still think that could be a tough game for Yale. Yale's playing much better. Dante Reno's starting to get comfortable in that offense, and of course, we all know what Joshua Pitzenberger can do. So,
unreal.
You say it all the time, and I agree with you. That Harvard Yale game is probably going to decide a bunch of things again here in a few weeks. So, we'll see. But nonetheless, we've got some big games coming up in the Ivy League. And speaking of big games, Maction kicks off tomorrow night. UMass plays in their first Maction game ever. They are at Akron. It's hard to believe we have Tuesday Night Football. Our Ryan Barry will get you ready for that one with his preview. That'll be up on anyfootballjournal.com. You excited about the Minutemen playing tomorrow night on national television?
So it's funny. I actually was until I saw that they are not the ESPN game. They are CBS Sports Network tomorrow night.
It's fine. We get it.
It's so UMass. It really is. But yeah,
how is it so UMass? That's not UMass's fault. They don't decide that.
No, I know, but it's par for the course.
No. I'm not letting you off the hook with this one.
It's not on UMass. I get it.
CBS has bought into that package as well.
I know.
ESPN, everybody thinks Maction is exclusive to ESPN. And they do have the majority of that package.
Yeah.
But CBS Sports Network has had a share of that package now for probably 4 or 5 years.
No, I know.
So, well, you didn't know. Don't say you knew. You didn't know.
No, I did because I'm a sicko and watch some of those games. So, and I bet on them, not very successfully, but I do. So, no, look, I am just because I wonder if, A, this is a winnable game for them, which would be nice to see.
Well, the beginning of the year, this was the winnable game.
Right. Yeah. But but it's just you hope they just show up and don't be embarrassed on national television. This is you fought to get into the conference. Now you have to at least put forth a good product, mostly for recruiting. We always talk about those big games where they go play Missouri and get the paycheck, right? But those games are really they're most important for recruiting. Putting a good product on TV that kids can see and say, oh, look, I can go play there on national television. They can't get blown out by a bad Akron team tomorrow night, whether it's ESPN or CBS Network, doesn't matter. So, yes, I'm intrigued to see if this motivates them at all, or if they, lay an egg, or, whatever it might be. They're also coming off a bye. So you hope there's a ton of energy there. So to answer your question, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to, next Wednesday night when they're on, there's more action for them too. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
next week they'll be at home against Northern Illinois. So,
yeah.
and
So
our Ryan Barry will be there for that game.
yeah, you hope the crowd shows up for that one. So yes, I am excited, but I just you hope for their sake and just for the program in general that they don't lay an egg tomorrow night.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears here. We've got a few minutes left on the show and talk some high school football. Of course, the MIAA playoff brackets were released yesterday. Of course, the timing was impeccable right before the Patriots kickoff, but we still were able to share them on our X page and on our X account, I should say, on our X account. And we gave you a little bit of a preview on each division. Some intriguing matchups here in the first round. Starting in Division 1, you got Natick-Weymouth, the 4-13 matchup. I think that's a pretty good matchup. The 7-10 matchup on the other side of the bracket, Methuen-Lowell, is going to be a really good matchup as well. You want a sleeper team in D1. Those are two sleeper teams, Methuen and Lowell. But that Lowell team, Scott Boyle, such a good coach. He's done a really good job of getting that program back on track. They could be a sleeper there. Division 2, don't get me started on D2. I don't want to get into it with CM and Feeing having buys. I think it's ridiculous. I think Division 2 illustrates just how screwed up this system is and why we continue to stick our heads in the sand and pretend like this system is good enough for us, and we don't want to fix it or change it. Division 2 is a prime example of why this system is so screwed up, because they didn't have enough teams qualify with 3 wins to have a 16-team bracket like the other divisions. And so as a result, Catholic Memorial and Feehan are getting buys. It's just really pisses me off. But a couple matchups to watch in D2. I think that Wellesley-Plymouth North matchup, it's an 8-9 matchup. I think that's going to be a really, really good matchup, one to keep an eye on there. But, I mean, again, I just can't get over your top 2 seeds having a bye. It really drives me nuts.
It's insane. The one thing I'll say, and we've been on the same page with this for years. So you're gonna sit there and tell me that you're gonna make a head coach look at a team at a meeting yesterday or practice today, who let's say went 6-3, and tell them they were not good enough to get into the playoffs, but a team that's 3-5 is. Well, how does this work? How is this fair? How does it make sense to those kids that busted their ass for their final year, or if you're a junior, whatever it might be? It's so wrong.
It's not, but not to cut you off. It's
Go
not
ahead.
about being fair. The bottom line is, but I disagree with you there, and the reason I disagree with you there is coaches know the way this system works. It's been around for a long time now. You got to play a better schedule. You need to play up. I mean, I coach at King Philip. We're playing Chicopee Comp, and a lot of people are going to look at that matchup and say, "What a joke!" Blah blah blah. Well, they're 8-0, and they were the 16 seed, and the reason they're the 16 seed is their strength of schedule. Now, unfortunately, if you're Chicopee Comp, you can only play. They did play Hopkinton this year. It's hard to get games out here, but the fact of the matter is they're undefeated, and they're actually a pretty good football team. They run option on offense. They fly to the ball on defense. It's if we don't come to play, we're going to have a problem. So, but my point in saying what I'm saying to you is, I think more coaches. You got a lot of teams that are 6-2. Not a lot, but you've got a couple of teams that are 6-2 that are staying at home. And if you're a coach, you have to look at this objectively and say, okay, why are we sitting at home at 6-2? Well, your schedule's not good enough. You've got to play good competition to help your rating. Coaches that don't do that are doing themselves and their kids a disservice.
So I hear you, and it totally makes sense. obviously that's why they put the system in place. I just have a real problem with, again, a senior in high school now having to play 3 consolation games.
Well, it's not 3, it's 2. I mean,
2.
unless you think Thanksgiving is now a consolation
I
game.
I don't. We can't get to Thanksgiving yet. You and I will both go off for an hour. So it's just, to me, again, it goes back to those seniors who apparently just strength of schedule is the reason they're not continuing on in their quest for a Super Bowl. But a team who has 2 or 3 wins is. It just
Well, a
it's
team that has 2 wins isn't. You need to have a minimum of 3 to
three,
qualify.
sure. So, but even still, like, it doesn't add up to me. It's just, and again, I get it. The strength of schedule thing was put in for a reason, but it's just hard for me to look at a kid and tell them that's how things are playing out when just logically it doesn't make sense. So that's the problem I have. But on the other side, to your point, there's some good matchups for early in the season. We're going to be in a few of them. Just looking real quick as my email just
Well,
X's out.
I'm just gonna put them out there. We're not gonna be at
Yeah,
all these, by the way. It's hard to get to a lot of games, to be honest with you. We only have so many people that are available, and unlike some of our competitors in this market, we actually try to cover as much of New England as possible. So we're not as Massachusetts centric all the time
yeah.
either. We're going to be covering games in 3 states this weekend, so that's part of it as well. But to go back to the previous exercise in Division 3, which, by the way, is a wagon.
Hmm.
That's the loaded division. You've got some really good first-round matchups. You got Melrose taking on Masco. That's a 6-11 matchup. That's going to be a really good first-round matchup. Mansfield, Plymouth North, 8-9 matchup. That's going to be a terrific matchup as well. You also have a 7-10 matchup of North Attleboro and Milford, and an intriguing 3-14 matchup. You usually don't consider 3-14 matchups to be potentially intriguing, but in Division 3, you do have an intriguing 3-14 matchup in Milton hosting Reading. Reading, of course, is a program with a rich history and tradition of playoff success. So that's a matchup to keep an eye on. I'm not saying, it's upset alert, but that's, if you ask Steve Dombrowski, he would tell you that's not an easy draw in the first round, because while Reading hasn't been as good as they've traditionally been the last couple of years, John Fiore does a great job there. They have tough kids. They have good skill. They'll be ready to go. In Division 4, Scituate is your number 1 seed, which is not a surprise. They've been the dominant program along with Duxbury in recent years. You got a couple of interesting matchups here. Duxbury, the 4-13 matchup with Holliston, is one to keep an eye on. Another interesting matchup is the 7-10 matchup, Ashland and Danvers. That should be a pretty good matchup as well. And the 3-14 matchup, another 3-14 matchup to watch, Canton Wakefield. D5, which hasn't been as strong the last couple of years, is a deep division this year. You've got some really, really good teams. Your number 1 seed there, of course, is Shawsheen, who currently own the state's longest winning streak. Couple of matchups to keep an eye on there. St. Mary's and Greater Lawrence Tech should be a good one, and that's the 8-9 matchup. And again, this is a rarity. The 2-15 matchup is interesting in D5. It features Foxborough and Norton. A lot of ties there. Norton coach Jim Arts was the offensive coordinator at Foxborough for years under Jack Martinelli. He also played for Jack Martinelli at Foxborough, so some storylines there with that one. The Archbishop William Swampscott matchup, the 6-11 matchup, is a pretty good one too. And I think, Kevin, Archbishop Williams, in my opinion, is the sleeper in Division 5. They've rolled through the regular season with Hudson Garrity and Zay Wiggum and Ethan O'Connell and that skill group. But now I'm curious to see, does it translate into the playoffs? This is a really good football team that has a good staff, has talent. Are they good enough to go all the way and win it? We'll find out.
Well, I think for a kid like Hudson Garrity too, who's had a ton of attention on him early, now this is where you show out. This is when everybody's watching. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious to see how he kind of
Now
handles.
all eyes will be on him, because with all due respect to Archie's, they didn't play the strongest schedule either.
Right. So now all
So,
eyes are on you. How do you do in the playoffs now?
yeah, it'll be interesting. In Division 6, Norwell is the number 1 seed. Couple of interesting matchups there. Defending champ Hudson taking on Bellingham in the 5-12 matchup. It's a good Bellingham team. It shows you how good Medfield is, by the way. They're in D5. We didn't even talk about them. They beat Bellingham big a couple weeks ago. Again, that's another team to keep an eye on in 5. Another quality matchup in Division 6 is the 7-10 matchup between Medway and Bishop Fenwick. And the Stoneham-Winthrop matchup, the 6-11 matchup, should be an interesting matchup as well. In Division 7, your number 1 seed is Cohasset, led by quarterback Michael Wildfire, arguably the best player name in the state of Massachusetts. Skippers are looking to make a run here. They will open up tournament play with Leicester this week. Couple matchups to keep an eye on there. The 4-13 matchup in what could be his last playoff run. Ken LaChapelle leads his Rams against Seekonk. A couple of other matchups. That 7-10 matchup, Uxbridge, the defending champ in D7, taking on Blue Hills, who beat Tri-County last week, is another one to keep an eye on. And another intriguing 3-14 matchup. You've got West Bridgewater against St. Bernard's in another matchup to keep an eye on. And in D8, you also have several teams that are going to be in the mix. Amongst the favorites, you have Randolph, who is the 4 seed. But there's several teams there in D8, Kevin, that could also make a run. So it's a pretty good group of games this week, and we have a pretty good collection of games this weekend, I should say. The brackets all line up. They're pretty good. It's going to make for a fun month of high school football here before we wrap it all up.
Yeah, as you know, I went on my rant earlier, but it's the best time of the year around here between, the high school playoffs and then the college playoff races as well. And obviously everything kind of ends high school wise at Gillette in that first weekend of December. So I think I'm more intrigued by this first round than I was the last couple years, or really since they started the statewide playoffs. We talked about parity in the NFL. There's parity now in high school football, at least around here, maybe more so than ever. I think one of the best examples was a game I was at this past Friday. We had Canton beat Mansfield for the first time in 35 years. Since 1990, they hadn't beaten Mansfield. So it's truly in any given Friday night, I guess you can say, especially this time of year.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's some other big games as well. You're going to be at a big one on Friday night.
I can't wait.
That's Tabor Academy at BB&N. The ISL Large will be at stake there. Mike Willie texted me right when we started the show, and he says to me, you guys are going to be there, right? Of course we're going to be there. I said to him, Kevin's going to be there, so we're excited to cover that one. We're also going to be covering Greenwich and Wilton down in Connecticut. Big matchup there. And our Charlie Adams will be at the Bishop Hendrick and St. Ray's first-round playoff matchup in the quarterfinals, which should be a dandy as well. So it's a great time of the year, to your point. Playoffs starting in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Connecticut still has a couple weeks left in their regular season. Vermont is on to the second round in their playoffs. There's some great matchups in Division 1 in Vermont. You got Burton taking on Middlebury. You also have Rutland taking on St. Johnsbury. And, of course, in Division 2, you have Hartford, who's been the best team in Vermont all year. So there's some great second-round matchups up there as well. So it should be a good weekend of high school football action. All right, final thoughts here, Stone, as we put a bow on this one. We went a little over tonight.
Only college team we didn't mention, CCSU is still atop the NEC. There's a real chance if they go back-to-back here and make an FCS playoff run. And then that Maine team is just incredible. It's 5 straight wins for them. They're a game out of first in the CAA with a matchup against URI next weekend. So they might be the surprise story of the year in FCS. Just a couple really cool storylines to watch down the stretch here locally.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. When we be back, we will be back with you next week. Until then, have a happy and healthy week. Peace.